Good evening, everybody, or good morning, or good afternoon from wherever you're coming from. Christy from Happy and Healthy TV here with you guys tonight to film another day of 100 Girls with Lyme documentary. We're on day 9 now. So the topic for today that I felt would be appropriate was advocating for yourself when you have late-stage Lyme disease. The reason I picked that topic out today was because it's a common topic, obviously, I think all of us Lymies deal with, is advocating for yourself. In addition to that, I've had an instance today where I really needed to advocate for myself, and I'll be personal and share that as we go along. So, what goes on for most people with Lyme when they, let's say you're a case like mine, and you test positive for all the titers, you have all the clinical symptoms, had dozens and dozens and dozens of people tell you, this is what's going on. However, as anybody with Lyme disease knows, in the later stages, people don't always accept a late-stage Lyme diagnosis. So I was very fortunate. My old primary care doctor very much understood Lyme, was also working with a great specialist at the time, and they were very communicative, between each other. At that time, I was like 90 pounds soaking wet. I'd lost a lot of weight, so, and then went down to 70 pounds, so on and so forth. So they knew something was wrong, obviously, but interestingly enough, as the past couple of years have gone on, I've been on different meds to gain weight, so nobody really pays attention. However, if I went off of those meds, it's very highly likely that I would just drop down back to being a stick figure again. So, what I found for me that was extremely frustrating is I see every specialty, urology, neurology, psychology. I have neuropsych, Lyme from Babesia. Anything basically ending in ology. It's crazy. Like, I've basically been seeing all of those doctors. So, it's interesting. I have on my medical records, God, it must be 20 different conditions that stem from Lyme. And some of them show they're resolved, which is ridiculous because they're not actually resolved by the body fixing itself. They're saying it's just resolved because of medication. So that is very frustrating because to me, that issue is not resolved until, sorry guys, water. Until you can deal with that first. So, here's some advice on this. If you have a physician who's not listening to you and you do know that you have Lyme, you've tested positive for it, or even if you suspect it, and you have all the clinical symptoms, and a doctor is kind of poo-pooing what you're saying or your thought process, I'm always very respectful when speaking to a practitioner. Again, I'm in the field too, so I want to make sure that I'm not saying the wrong thing or being inappropriate or, just letting my anger and my emotions get the best of me. So I think a very good place to start there is to try to open a dialogue and be more communicative if possible. If need be, switching doctors may be a good idea. In our case for Lyme, I would look for somebody that is more holistically oriented and is more in alignment with what I do, because I tend to clash with physicians because what I do is very different than a physician. I'm looking to solve the problem from the root cause. Physician is kind of looking to put a Band-Aid approach on it. No one's fault. That's what they're trained on. And I think that's something else to bring up. We talk about how Lyme is the AIDS of the 2000s. And right now, at this current moment, there is some research on it, but they keep pulling back. And there's not a ton of research on what do you do when you wind up with late-stage Lyme. How do you continue to treat it? How do you eradicate it? And how do you get a doctor to listen to you? So, again, my advice is, first, always be kind. Second, try to be the smartest person in the room. Honestly, I think that that's probably one of the things that has helped me the most is that I've got a wealth of knowledge and research in my brain about Lyme, what it causes, what the co-infections cause. I mean, for God's sake, I'm writing my fourth book on that. So I look at my doctor sometimes and I'm just like, I'm not even going to argue with you. One of my mentors had always taught me, if people are saying that you're crazy or they don't understand what's going on, will improve them wrong. So it's funny, I had a doctor's appointment last week where I actually brought some paperwork in and some research studies for a physician who was not understanding Lyme disease. And the physician looks at it and he's kind of dumbfounded and then looks at me and apologizes to me for not understanding what was going on. Meanwhile, about 2 weeks prior to that, I had an appointment with the same physician. This is really funny. I'm arguing with him in the waiting room about Lyme disease, and a young lady stands up, and she's with a cane. She's, "Oh, I have Lyme too." She's like, "That's ridiculous," and she starts yelling at my doctor. So these two, it's just two patients kind of ganged up on him. It's pretty funny, politely and appropriately, of course. Come to find out she's a nutritionist also. So it was very funny. So I made a good friend in a doctor's office. So again, trying to be polite as much as you can. A big thing also, like I said, having that research behind you. What if you know you have co-infections, if you know that you have Lyme, I always recommend bringing a book or something like that. Dr. Horowitz's book comes with me many places. Deep in the Woods is another great book that I'll take in, and I'll pull research out of there, because I mean there is a ton of published research on different treatments and why Lyme is spreading. So I think that that's important, you know, to try to, you know, educate your doctor a little bit without being rude, and coming across as being pompous is a great way to get somebody to hopefully understand what's going on with you. So I think that that is a key piece. So the communication has to be there. Advocacy for yourself. Here's this saying that one of my nutrition buddies says all the time. I think this came from a Patrick Swayze movie. Be nice until it's not time to be nice anymore. So I kind of have a 3 strikes and you're out rule with me. If I'm with the physician and I'm listening to the person and they're just not getting it, at that point I just want to fire them, because I'm not going to get anywhere. And that doctor is just going to get frustrated. I'm going to get frustrated. Another thing that I always kind of do is set the expectation when I'm walking into a physician's office. It's frustrating because it's like, okay, you know, we know that you have Lyme. It's all over your medical records. But yeah, we're not treating it. We don't want to do anything about it. Like, it's not as bad as it is. So I think that a good thing to do is to set your expectations high, that you're going to advocate for yourself. You're going to have that research. But also at the same time, I try to tell patients, do not be discouraged after you leave a doctor's office. Maybe a 5-minute pity party if somebody's just not getting it and it's frustrating. Honestly, I think that's probably the worst thing that a Lyme patient goes through, is not only the physical aspect of it and not being understood. I think the not being understood part is a huge, huge piece of it, quite frankly, because when you know that you have something wrong with you and your doctor says this to you, but then doesn't want to do anything to treat it or advocate for you, or have other doctors say, oh, we had this one diagnosis, but now we don't think it's this or that. Come on now. Like, it's just, after a while, you feel like you're just spinning around in circles on a hamster wheel. So my advice is to try to jump out of that hamster wheel. You know, if you can find somebody that's more supportive, some physician's assistants, you know, are very privy to Lyme. I have found nurse practitioners. So there are people out there that definitely have more research-oriented things behind them. So yeah, so those are kind of my go-to tips for today. If a doctor does make you upset, again, you have every right to fire said doctor. You don't have to stay with the doctor if you feel that they're not advocating for your case. And I think every doctor should advocate for their patients' cases. I'm in the medical field. I advocate hardcore for my patients. Hardcore. Like, if there's something going on with a patient, there's that saying, doctors say that when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. That's not the way I think. I'm looking for the zebra. I'm looking for that exotic animal in the room and trying to put the person together as a whole. Another thing to maybe bring up, and we can talk about this more in another video, is trauma. You know, having trauma while having Lyme disease. That's terrible. There's a lot of emotional trauma that goes with having Lyme. One, if you've got meningitis or something going on like that, you've got trauma going on to the brain. So there's physical trauma maybe throughout the body with different systems, organs that aren't working correctly. But the sheer responsibility of having to deal with Lyme, like sometimes you know, I drive myself crazy sometimes. Do I pay for experimental treatment this month, and not eat? Seriously, I mean that's what it boils down to. Or, you know, do I go around and try to do it a different way? And that's where it gets very, very difficult. Again, I've spoken about this on previous videos. I know people with Lyme that are living in their cars. I know people who have lost everything. Myself, I lost my corporate job at one point, which again was understandable, no hard feelings at all, with that decision that was made, because I just couldn't work. I couldn't do my job. So that was a big blow for me. So a lot of people losing independence. I'll hear people having to move back home or move in with family. And thank God for that. At least somebody's helping you out. But at the same time, I think mourning the loss of independence is a huge piece of this. So 1, you've got trauma going on to the body. 2, there's emotional trauma going on. 3, you know, what about your support network? Like, where is that? Like, what goes on with that? I find that that's been very, very helpful. Having a support network for sure. Not having one, obviously, is not ideal in this case. a lot of times I feel like a physician will look at you if you don't have somebody there advocating for you. That sometimes can be frustrating as well because people just don't get it. So it's nice if you do wind up going into a physician's office when you have an appointment, but great to bring a friend or a family member or even an acquaintance that knows what's going on with you, that's seen these symptoms, so somebody else can advocate and say, hey, listen, I've seen this as well. This is what goes on with he or she, so on and so forth, what have you. So yeah, and the other thing I always say too, if a doctor's refusing to run a test or if I feel like something needs to be ordered, again, I'm a practitioner, so I pay attention to my body, and if I feel like something is going on, I'll ask my doctor to order blood work. Most of the time, he does not humor me, and when he doesn't, I ask him, can you please mark that in my chart that you're refusing to order me blood work? Watch how quick he turns around and just orders it, and that happens every time. So I'm like, oh, wait, hold on, put that up in my medical records. Essentially, you're refusing care for me, and that's ridiculous. So I'm not going to have that. So that's another great tip I learned along the way. So just to summarize, guys, what we spoke about today in a nutshell is, just frustration with dealing with medical practitioners or providers that do not understand Lyme disease. How do you cope with that? How do you handle it? What are things that you can do to help alleviate stress with all of that? And we went through kind of a plethora of different options there, a menu of options, so to speak, if you will. I told you I'd share a little bit of personal stuff on my story. I actually have, again, we talked about I had babesia. Since I was diagnosed with Lyme, and this is me coming out of the closet now, diagnosed with bipolar and a couple of other, mental health issues. Now, I have background in functional neuro, so I definitely understand the origin of bipolar in a way that people may not. At the same time, my PET scans show that my right side of my brain is actually anatomically smaller than the left. So that predisposes me to bad behavior, impulsive activity, like those types of things. And I'm aware of it, so I have to be careful with it. But here's the problem. About 2 years ago, I had a physician come into the hospital who, it's a long story and I don't want to violate HIPAA, so I'm just going to not say too much, had essentially, because they didn't understand Lyme, and I hear this all the time, like, oh, she's making this up. Every Lyme documentary I've ever seen, that the words from a doctor has been uttered out of, those words have been uttered out of a physician's mouth. Oh, yeah, you have Lyme disease, but it doesn't do all this stuff to you. And then that poor patient winds up suffering as a result. That has happened to me so many times, and I was in and out of the hospital so many times. Again, not by my choice. My doctor sent me there. With me kicking, screaming, and not wanting to go and trying to jump out of ambulances or escape. So, at one point, it was like, okay, well, she's making these symptoms up. It's a psychiatric issue. And I hear this all freaking day long. So, I had gotten into a fight with, or I don't want to say a fight, got into a heated debate with my therapist a couple of weeks ago. I was like, you need to do some research. Like, I'm not the only person that has this. And I left there extremely, extremely frustrated. You want to say I don't have Lyme disease, fine, but then why do I have Lyme carditis, and it's current, pericarditis, and a whole bunch of other weird things that are going on. So I think for me, it's really just advocating for yourself is the biggest piece of it. Most of us Lymies have to be our own doctors, so to speak. I hear that quote pretty often from Lyme patients because, again, unfortunately, the medical field has not caught up to this. The fortunate thing is there are a lot of great books out. And speaking of trauma, let me just pull something up because I always like to give you guys a takeaway. This is a really good book. You guys can see this here. The Body Keeps the Score. I really like this. This is all about mind, brain, body, and healing of trauma. So this doesn't talk about emotional trauma, but it talks about physical trauma too. This is a really, I have to say, I picked this up, a really, really good read. It is on the New York Times bestseller list. While I drop my camera, with my book as well. So I hope that you guys enjoy that. That's something great to check out. Another book, as I said, I mentioned before, was called In the Woods. Forgive me, I don't recall the author, but if you guys, you can Google it, you'll find it, or I'll put it in the comment box below. That's an excellent, excellent book on Lyme that has been out for a little while. So I definitely recommend that. There's another book called The Lyme Diet. I've just started reading this. Personally, for me, I recommend a keto diet for Lyme, but everybody's body is different, so that might not be appropriate for somebody based on ethical reasons or what their general overall makeup is or physiology. That's my job to obviously figure that out. So, All right, guys. So, yeah, that was a really good little rant on what do you do when you're frustrated with your doctor and you want to kick them in the face. Don't do that. I've not done that. Violence is bad. But, yeah, sometimes it's kind of hard not to do that. I've heard that from a lot of patients. So, I appreciate you guys listening. As always, hit the subscribe button below if you'd like to see more of our videos. We feature a different video at least once a week on either 100 Days of a Girl with Lyme documentary, a product review, vitamins and minerals, amino acids galore. Let's see what else I do. My vitamin M videos where I'm hopping around and dancing and playing the flute to cheer people up, because you can't have the healthy without the happy. So that's why we throw our vitamin M in there. We may start throwing in vitamin N, as in Nancy, for Mother Nature. I'm always taking pictures of the water. I'm very blessed. I live about a mile away from the beach. Seriously, like, so cool. It's a cool thing about living on an island. But, anyhow, it's really a great... Wow, I just lost my train of thought. This happens. Lyme brain just, like, kind of went away from where I was going. Oh, nature and stuff like that. I'm always going to nature preserves. I'm always taking pictures of different, sunsets, sunrises. Like I said, I used to run right past the water, so it was along my running route every day. Oh, my cat has come over to say hello, and she's marking her territory on the phone. Yes, Miss Precious. You can't see her, but she's next to the phone there. Oh, yeah, there's a tail. I think she thinks when I do these videos, I'm talking to her. Anyway, we want to wrap this up, guys. So, any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment box below. If you have a private question you want to ask me, you can always email us at Christie@happyandhealthywellness.com. You can contact us at 631-835-5003. I look forward to talking with you, and I look forward to hearing your comments, critiques, praise, whatever you'd like to put on here. Just get a little discussion going. What do you do when your doctor frustrates you and you have Lyme disease, and how do you handle it? I'd love to hear anybody else's tips. Well, thank you guys again. Everybody have a great evening or day or wherever you're coming to. Love you guys very much. Mwah. Thank you. Take care.